So in this build, I will be expounding on basically the difference between Tsalagi-Cherokee, right, and what people know today as Cherokees. Because as we know, as we um, look at not just today, but historically, a lot of people have adopted the Cherokee identity, and primarily because they dwelt on the lands where the so-called Cherokee lived. So it's a lot of people today that go by the Cherokee identity, and a lot of them aren't Cherokees. But then in the same hand, there are a lot of people who are actually Cherokees. So I'm about to jump back in this book that I read, and I did two parts to it, dealing with the archaeological history of Ohio, the mound builders, and later Indians. And I'm going to be reading from page 438. And yeah, this is interesting. Just pay close attention because I'm giving a lot of game out. All right. So we will begin where I read off in the other video where I started at. There can be no reasonable doubt that the Alligawi or Tsalagi, who have given their name to the Allegheny River and mountains, were the mound builders. The destiny which ultimately befell the mound builders can be inferred from what is known of the fate of the Hurons themselves in their final war with the Iroquois. The greater portion of the Huron people were exterminated and their towns reduced to ashes. Of the survivors, many were received and adopted among the conquerors. A few fled to the east and sought protection from the French, while a larger remnant retired to the northwest and took shelter among the friendly Ojibwas. The fate of the Tsalagi was doubtless similar to that which overtook the descendants of their Huron conquerors. So long as the conflict continued, it was a war of extermination. All the conquered were massacred, and all that was perishable in their towns was destroyed. When they finally yielded, many of the captives would be spared to recruit the thin ranks of their conquerors. I might have to read that part again. When they finally yielded, many of the captives would be spared to recruit the thin ranks of their conquerors. Such adoption of defeated enemies is one of the most ancient and cardinal principles of the Huron-Cherokees well-devised political system. I might have to read that part again too, because this explains why a lot of the Cherokees are mixed up today, and why our particular lineage is scattered about. Why not everybody has 6 fingers like we used to, because we intermixed in. We became captives of the people who conquered us. So let me read again. Such adoption of the defeated enemies is one of the most ancient and cardinal principles of the Huron-Cherokees well-devised political system. It is by no means unlikely that a portion of the mound builders may, during the conflict, have separated from the rest and deliberately united their destiny with those of the conquering race. Either in such an alliance or in the adoption of captive enemies, we may discern the origin of the great Cherokee nation, a people speaking a mixed language, which shows evident traces of its mixed origin in grammar, mainly Huron-Cherokees, and in vocabulary, largely recruited from some foreign source. I gotta pause right there, because basically the Cherokee language that's being spoken today, it has been Huronized, Iroquoisized, if I will give a word to describe it. It's been influenced by Huron-Iroquois, and grammatically, right? But the lexicon of words is from a foreign source. I read it again. Either in such an alliance or in the adoption of captive enemies, we may discern the origin of the great Cherokee nation, a people speaking a mixed language which shows evident traces of its mixed origin in grammar, mainly Huron-Iroquois, and in vocabulary, largely recruited from some foreign source. That foreign source is the Moonai Negroes. That's us. We were speaking it. So after they conquered us, right, and defeated us in war, they began to live among us and speak our language, and the grammar was added to it, similar to how Spanish was created, where basically Spanish technically is a Arabized Latin language. So it's Latin with Arabic grammar in it. And so it's the same with Cherokee. So what does this mean? This means that the people who are speaking it today are the Huron-Iroquois that conquered my people, and now they're speaking my language with the Huron-Iroquois grammar, and the lexicon of the vocabulary of our language is from a foreign source. You see what I'm saying? So the language itself is telling you the history too, that it was a war that occurred, captives were taken in, they started to speak our language, and our language is mixed now because of that. So let me get back to read. Another portion of the defeated race fleeing southward would come directly into the country of the Choctaw or Choctaws. With these, the northern conquerors would have no quarrel, and the remnant of the Tsalagi would be allowed to remain in peace. Every known fact favors the view that during a period which may be estimated at between 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, the Ohio Valley was occupied by an industrious population of some Indian stock, which had attained a grade of civilization similar to that now held by the village Indians of New Mexico and Arizona. That this population was assailed from the north by less civilized and more warlike tribes of Algonquins and Hurons, acting in a temporary league, similar to those alliances which Pontiac and Tecumseh afterwards rallied against the white colonists. That after a long and wasted war, the assailants were victorious. The conquered people were in great part exterminated. The survivors were either incorporated with the conquering tribes or fled southward and found refuge among the nations which possessed the region lying between Ohio Valley and the Gulf of Mexico, and that this mixture of races has largely modified the language, character, and usage of the Cherokee and Choctaw nations. In that Choctaw part, I'm going to build on in another video, because Choctaws were aboriginals too, so-called Negro, and now we see the Huron-Iroquois bloodline mixed within them, and their language has been altered too, believe it or not. But we're dealing with Cherokee right now. Now, what has been shown with reading this is that the language that we speak, all right, is showing the history that the conquerors came in. Mind you, the language has a foreign source, the vocabulary, but the grammar is of the conquerors. So this also explains why, because remember, we were dispersed. Either we were captives among the tribes, inside the tribes, or we fled to other nations. So this explains why people who have our 6-finger, 6-toed trait, we don't have it like we used to have, like what everybody in the family had it. It's now a couple family members have it, some don't. Is because we are mixed in with the Aniyvnwiya, which is what we would call the so-called Muskogee Creeks, and then we have the other factions of Indians, such as the Iroquois, the Hurons, and other different tribes. But we mixed in with a lot of people, so our bloodline is not as it used to be. But this is clearly showing you that the Cherokee language. Now watch this. I'm about to blow your head off with this one right here, because I'm about to go to James Mooney book, Myths of the Cherokee, page 15, right? Now this has to do with the whole Aniyvnwiya. I'm gonna do this real quick, right? Now, it reads at the bottom right here, the proper name by which the Cherokee call themselves is Yunwiya or Aniyvnwiya in the third person, signifying real people or principal people. The word closely related to Onwihonwe, the name by which the cognate Iroquois know themselves. So Aniyvnwiya, mind you, we talked about the language being corrupted and influenced and all that. Aniyvnwiya, in the context how it's used today, is from the Iroquois Huron people, and they still say it as Onwehonwe, and we say Aniyvnwiya, Yonwiya. We still say it that way. So when they deny the Cherokee word, which I'm going to prove in another video, is our old identity, which I already did with tying it to the Allegheny, saying denying Cherokee and saying Aniyvnwiya is you claiming technically the Huron Iroquois lineage and not the Aboriginal one. Stay tuned, y'all. This is finna get real funky, man. I'm Six Fingers. D Dioli, huh? Dungale Nishkan.